The message came at midnight, cutting through Earth's usual transmissions like a sudden storm. At first, it was dismissed as static, a random burst of noise from deep space. But for Dr. Leela Kane, it was something different. The seasoned astrophysicist sat hunched over her console at the University of Astronomical Sciences, her eyes narrowing as she traced the signal's intricate patterns. It wasn't just random, it was deliberate. For days, the signal had been growing stronger, a pattern emerging in its chaotic rhythm. Lila's team of researchers had detected the anomaly, but this was more than a strange transmission. It was a cry from the stars, a message that had traveled for millennia. The signal was too sophisticated, too perfect to be of natural origin. She decoded the first few lines, an ancient language, one that hadn't been spoken for thousands of years, yet something about it felt strangely familiar. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she applied the translation algorithm. As the last symbols clicked into place, a single word echoed through the speakers: shattered. Leela's heart skipped. That was it, the only word the transmission contained. She replayed it, feeling the weight of it settle over her. Shattered. It wasn't just a word, it was a warning. A warning of something broken, something hidden. Her team had been investigating the galaxy's deep space anomalies for years, but nothing had prepared them for this. They had theorized about the existence of long-lost civilizations and the potential for ancient galactic wars, but no one had ever expected a message this specific. What was it referring to? The galaxy was vast, and humanity had only scratched the surface of its history. Yet this signal seemed to imply that Earth was on the cusp of uncovering something far darker than they had ever imagined. She sent the transmission off to her colleagues, but as the data began to transmit, her communications console flickered. Static crackled through the speakers, and a new set of coordinates appeared on the screen, a location at the edge of known space, in an area heavily guarded by the Shattered Alliance, an intergalactic coalition of species that had held control over the galaxy for eons. The region was a dead zone, no ships entered, no communications left. Leela's pulse quickened. This wasn't a random occurrence. The Shattered Alliance, an entity Earth had only heard of in whispers, had been hiding something. What was so important that they had erased all records of it? What had the galaxy's oldest and most powerful coalition tried to bury? Her fingers hovered over the console's activation button. A part of her hesitated. This could be a trap. But another part of her, a part she couldn't ignore, urged her forward. Humanity had always sought the truth. It was time they uncovered what had been hidden for so long. She stood abruptly, turning to face her assistant, Dr. Marcus Cole, who had been working late beside her. Marcus, get the team together. We're going to investigate this signal. I need a ship and a crew ready in 48 hours. I don't care what it takes. Marcus blinked, confused but intrigued. You're sure about this? This isn't just some space anomaly, Leela. This is something else entirely. I know, she said, her voice low. And I think it's the key to everything we've been looking for. Unbeknownst to Leela, as her team scrambled to prepare for their mission, a shadowy figure watched from the darkness of space. The Shattered Alliance had already detected the breach. They were coming. The ship left Earth's atmosphere in the dead of night, its engines barely a whisper against the vastness of space. Dr. Leela Kane's team, a mix of experts from astrophysics, cryptography, and engineering, sat in tense silence. The small vessel, Argentum, was outfitted for stealth, designed to evade detection as much as possible. Yet, despite the advanced technology at their disposal, Leela couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something they couldn't control. As they hurtled toward the coordinates provided by the mysterious signal, the sense of unease among the crew grew. Leela's thoughts were a whirlwind. What could the message "shattered" possibly mean? Was it a warning, a clue, or something darker? And why was it hidden so far from any known space? No one had dared venture near this region of the galaxy for centuries. ETA in 20 minutes, Marcus Cole's voice cut through the silence. "Everything looks clear on scanners." "Keep your guard up," Lila replied, her eyes fixed on the blinking red light of the console. "We don't know who else is watching." The tension in the cabin was palpable, and yet, as they neared the coordinates, something shifted. The stars seemed to warp around them, flickering in odd patterns. Lila's hands gripped the armrests of her seat. The phenomenon was unlike anything they had encountered before. No space anomaly, no black hole, no distortion had ever appeared like this. The area around them shimmered, as if reality itself was bending and breaking. "Dr. Kane, you need to see this," one of the engineers, Simone Valdez, called from the back of the ship. Lila rushed over, her heart pounding. On the screen, a massive structure appeared, so vast that it seemed to take up the entire view. It wasn't a planet, nor was it a station. It was something ancient, something alive. Towers stretched out from a central hub, reaching toward the stars like outstretched fingers. The entire construct pulsed with an eerie glow, its surface jagged and cracked, as though it had been shattered and hastily repaired. The structure was alive, its surface shifting, adjusting, reacting to the presence of the ship. "What is it?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Lila said, staring at the screen. "But we're not alone." Her voice was barely audible when a sharp beep from the sensors confirmed it. At least half a dozen ships appeared on the radar, alien warships, sleek and deadly, closing in fast. The Shattered Alliance, Lila realized. They had known they would come for her. The idea of a human vessel invading their territory had been unacceptable, and now they would stop her at any cost. "Brace yourselves," she ordered. Before anyone could respond, the Argentum was rocked by a sudden jolt. The lights flickered, and the hum of the engines grew louder, warping as if something was pulling at the ship's very structure. Lila's team scrambled to their stations, trying to stabilize the ship. "We're locked in a gravity well," someone reported. "Whatever this thing is, it's drawing us in." The enemy ships closed in, weapons primed and aimed at the tiny vessel. Their intentions were clear. There was no escape. Lila felt her pulse race as the first salvo of energy blasts rained down upon the Argentum. The shields flickered, holding for a moment before collapsing under the intensity of the assault. The crew was thrown forward as the ship shuddered violently, and Lila's vision blurred. "Get us out of here," she shouted, gripping the controls. But the gravity well was too strong. They were trapped. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the barrage of fire ceased. The enemy ships hovered, surrounding the Argentum, their weapons silent for now. Lila stared out the viewport, her breath catching in her throat, as she saw the ships for what they truly were, sleek, alien craft, black as the void itself. They had been waiting for her. Suddenly, a transmission came through, a voice crackling over the comms. "You have violated our space, human. Surrender now, or we will ensure your species never reaches the truth." Lila's heart froze. The Shattered Alliance wasn't just a political entity. They were gatekeepers of something far darker, and they had just issued their warning. The silence was broken by the sound of the docking bay opening on the enemy ship. It was time to meet them face to face. The ship's metal groaned under the pressure of the enemy's proximity, and Lila could feel every fiber of her being tense with anticipation. The voice from the transmission still echoed in her mind. "Surrender now, or we will ensure your species never reaches the truth." They were serious. The Shattered Alliance wasn't just threatening them. They intended to act, and act swiftly. Lila took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she tried to maintain control over the Argentum's systems. The strange, pulsing structure that loomed just outside the viewport had to be their destination. But now, trapped and outgunned, it seemed less like a beacon of hope and more like a tomb. She wasn't sure what they would find there, but the Alliance had clearly decided they couldn't be allowed to discover it. "Lila," Marcus said, his voice tight with anxiety, "we're not going to make it." Their ships are locking onto us from every angle. We need to surrender, or they'll tear us apart." "No," Lila replied, her voice sharp. "We don't have a choice. We're going in." He glanced at her, confused, but her resolve left little room for argument. "We have to reach that structure," she continued, her voice quiet but resolute. "It's the only way we'll find answers. They're not going to let us go, but maybe, just maybe, we can use it to our advantage." A crackling sound erupted in the comms, followed by the distorted voice of the alien commander. "This is your final warning. Prepare for boarding." Before Leela could react, a massive thud reverberated through the ship. The Argentum lurched violently, as though something had struck it with tremendous force. She shot a glance at the control panel. Every system was still operational, but the pressure around them was mounting. Another thud, followed by the sudden flash of emergency lights. The enemy ships had attached their docking clamps, ensuring that there was no escape. "Prepare for impact," Marcus shouted as the interior of the ship suddenly darkened. Then came the noise, a screech of metal as a breach opened. The enemy ship had docked with the Argentum, and its invasion had begun. Leela's heart hammered in her chest as the air pressure began to change, the familiar hum of the Argentum's systems growing faint, replaced by a low menacing growl from the other side. A door at the rear of the vessel slid open slowly, and armed soldiers in black exosuits stormed into the room, their weapons raised and aimed. The Shattered Alliance was here. Leela held up her hands in an attempt to appear unthreatening, but she knew there was little hope of mercy. "We don't want any trouble," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through her veins. "We're here to find out the truth. We're not your enemies." One of the soldiers, towering and imposing with a sleek helmet obscuring its face, stepped forward. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice with a knife. The soldier didn't speak, but its posture, rigid and unyielding, spoke volumes. He was waiting for something, for orders, for a reason to strike. "You don't understand." A voice suddenly crackled through the intercom, deep and commanding. The commander. "You've stumbled upon something that was never meant for you to find. The truth you seek is a lie, a half-shattered illusion. You will never leave this place." Leela stood her ground, her mind racing. The moment of truth had come, and there was no turning back. The Shattered Alliance had made their intentions clear. They were desperate to prevent humanity from uncovering what had been buried for so long. But why? What was so dangerous about the truth that they would go to such lengths to protect it? The soldiers began to advance, their footsteps echoing ominously in the quiet of the ship. Leela's heart pounded, and her eyes darted to Marcus. Without a word, they knew what had to be done. "Marcus, I need you to override the lockdown," she whispered urgently. "Open the docking bay doors. Now." Marcus' fingers flew over his console. Sweat beaded on his brow as he worked quickly, trying to unlock the ship's systems under pressure. With every passing second, the soldiers closed in, and the weight of their presence threatened to crush her resolve. But she couldn't let them win. They couldn't, not when they were so close. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the cabin as the doors to the docking bay slid open. A massive wave of pressure sucked the air out of the room, the rush of sound nearly deafening. The Shattered Alliance soldiers recoiled in surprise, stumbling as the atmosphere shifted. Leela seized the opportunity. "Move," she shouted, grabbing Marcus's arm and pulling him toward the bay. They sprinted toward the open space, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. They had no choice now. Escape was their only hope, and the unknown structure ahead was the key to everything. The towering ship loomed over the ruins of the station, its silhouette sharp against the backdrop of distant stars. It was unlike anything Leela had ever seen, a jagged, angular design that seemed to breathe with the weight of forgotten eons. The moment it dropped out of hyperspace, the atmosphere in the pod shifted, and Leela could feel a sense of gravity, not physical but emotional, pulling them toward the ancient structure. "Marcus, what is that thing?" Leela whispered, her voice barely a breath. Marcus had his eyes glued to the scanners. The ship was massive, its hull marked with strange symbols, and its surface was pitted as though the years had weathered it like stone. I don't know. It's not anything I've seen in the Alliance's records. This ship, it predates everything. Predates everything. Leela repeated, her voice tight. You mean it's older than the Shattered Alliance? Much older. This could be the original fleet of the architects. Marcus's words hung in the air like a threat. The people who built this place, the ones the Shattered Alliance is trying to suppress. They've been hiding something from us for a long time. Leela felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She thought she had begun to understand the nature of their journey, but now a deeper, darker question arose. What had the architects left behind, and why was it so dangerous that the galaxy's most powerful forces were desperate to prevent anyone from finding it? The pod docked with the forgotten station with a soft thud. As the airlock hissed open, Leela took a moment to look at Marcus, his brow furrowed with both fear and excitement. The moment of truth was upon them. Leela's pulse raced as they made their way through the station. The walls were covered in an eerie bioluminescent moss that flickered in the dark, casting an unnatural glow. Every surface seemed like it had been untouched for centuries, yet there was an unmistakable sense of life still lingering in the place. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the station, strange holographic images flickered to life around them, displaying abstract patterns and images that defied understanding. This is incredible, Marcus breathed as the holograms shifted, revealing incomprehensible alien symbols and celestial maps of the galaxy, far more advanced than anything the Alliance had shown them. Leela nodded, her fingers tracing the edges of the shimmering projection. Who were these people? What happened to them? Marcus was about to respond when a low hum filled the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, a presence approaching them from behind. Leela spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at her side. The dark corridors suddenly felt claustrophobic, like the walls were closing in. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and slender, draped in a flowing robe that seemed to ripple with an ethereal energy. The figure's face was obscured by a mask, but its posture, regal and almost solemn, exuded an undeniable authority. This was no ordinary being. It felt as though time itself had paused in the presence of the individual before them. Leela's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea who, or what, this figure was, but she felt its gaze, even through the mask. It wasn't hostile, but it was purposeful. You have come seeking the truth. The figure's voice resonated through the chamber. It was deep and melodic, as though the very sound of it belonged to the stars themselves. But some truths are too dangerous to comprehend. Leela stiffened. Who are you? She demanded, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing through her mind. The figure tilted its head, as if studying her. We are the last of the architects, the ones who once guided the galaxy. But that was before the Shattered Veil. Shattered Veil, Marcus repeated, eyes wide. Is that what the Shattered Alliance is hiding? The truth behind the veil? The figure's stance seemed to soften, and it stepped forward, closer to them. Yes, the veil is a memory, a barrier that shields the galaxy from knowledge that would unravel it all. I, was tasked with protecting it, guarding the last remnants of the ancient order. Leela's breath caught in her throat. The Shattered Veil, it's not just a war, is it? It's about keeping the galaxy in the dark. You're saying the Alliance is part of this. The Alliance, the architect intoned, is the result of the fall. Their existence is tied to the Veil's protection. They have been deceived, just as you have. And now, you are the last hope to decide whether the galaxy should remain in the dark or face the truth that has been buried for millennia. A chill ran through Leela's spine. But why us? Why now? The figure looked at her, and for the first time, Leela could see something flicker in its hidden eyes. Because you, it said, are the ones who can shatter the veil. You are the ones who can bring forth the truth." Leela and Marcus exchanged a glance. The weight of the situation was too great for words. The very galaxy they knew was on the brink of being exposed, and the cost of the truth would be more than they could ever have imagined. "You must decide now," the architect said, its voice a mere whisper in the growing silence. "What will you do?" Leela's mind raced. The architect's words hung in the air, heavy with the gravity of their implications. She looked at Marcus, whose face had turned pale, but his eyes were burning with the same unspoken questions. What truth? They had always known that the galaxy wasn't what it seemed, but to hear it from this ancient being, this remnant of a lost civilization, it changed everything. "Why should we trust you?" Leela finally asked, her voice breaking the tense silence. "How do we know you're not part of the lie?" The architect's mask shimmered faintly as it tilted its head, considering her words. "I am not the enemy," it replied, its voice almost sorrowful. "I am the last of the architects, those who built the foundations of the galaxy's peace. But peace is a fragile thing, and it is not the truth. The truth is that the galaxy is bound by a cycle of lies that began long before your time, and it must end." Marcus stepped forward, his usual quiet resolve now infused with a burning curiosity. "The shattered veil. What is it really? Why does the Alliance protect it?" The architect's presence seemed to grow even more solemn, as if the question itself was a wound long kept hidden. "The shattered veil is not just a barrier, it is a seal. A containment of knowledge, of power, that the galaxy cannot survive if it fully awakens. The Shattered Alliance, your enemies, they have been manipulated. They believe they are preserving order, but in truth, they are preserving an ancient pact." Leela's chest tightened. A pact with who? The architect's gaze grew distant, and for a moment, the air seemed to shimmer with a hidden history. The architects once ruled, guiding the galaxy through its infancy. We were the keepers of knowledge, but that knowledge became a threat. We discovered a power, an ancient energy, hidden within the very fabric of the universe. It was a force that could unmake and remake reality itself. We locked it away, built the veil to shield it from those who would seek to use it, and in time, we were betrayed. A faction among us, those who sought to control this power, broke the veil and unleashed chaos upon the galaxy. The cycle of war, of empires rising and falling, of civilizations vanishing, all of it is the result of that betrayal. Leela's head spun. "You're saying the entire galaxy has been living in a lie, that it's all been caused by one group of people who wanted to control something that shouldn't have been touched." The architect nodded slowly. "Yes, the Shattered Alliance, the so-called peacekeepers, were formed in the aftermath of that betrayal. They believe their cause is noble, but they are unaware of the deeper truth. They are keeping the veil intact, not to protect the galaxy, but to prevent it from unraveling completely." Marcus clenched his fists, his face twisted with anger. "So everything, the wars, the suffering, the alliances, it's all been to hide the truth from the people of the galaxy." "Yes," the architect replied. "The galaxy has been blinded to its true potential, shackled by fear of the power that lies beyond the veil. But that power, it is not something that can be kept locked away forever. You were meant to find it. You were meant to break the veil." Leela took a step back, absorbing the weight of what she was hearing. This was no longer just about survival, it was about the future of everything. And what happens if we do break it? What happens to the galaxy? "The veil is a delicate construct," the architect said. "If broken, the galaxy will be forced to confront the truth it has long been avoiding. The power that lies beyond the veil is not inherently good or evil, it simply is. It will change everything, but it is up to you and those who follow you to determine how it will be used." Leela's hands shook as she processed the enormity of their decision. The galaxy was a powder keg, and they were holding the match. "How do we even begin?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost lost. You must go to the heart of the veil, the architect replied. It is located in the core of the galaxy, deep within the uncharted territories where no one dares to venture. It is there that you will find the key to shattering the veil. Marcus exhaled sharply. That's suicide. We can't just march into the center of the galaxy and expect to find whatever this power is. Leela's mind raced with possibilities, the unknown dangers, the enemies they would face. But the architect's words held a strange pull, a feeling she couldn't shake. They had come this far, and now the truth was within reach. There was no turning back. What if we do it? Leela asked, more to herself than anyone else. What if we do shatter the veil and expose the truth to the galaxy? The architect seemed to nod, its presence solemn. Then you must be prepared, for the galaxy will change. But change is the only way forward. Leela looked at Marcus, whose eyes were filled with uncertainty, but also a glimmer of resolve. He was right. The mission ahead was dangerous, maybe even impossible. But the truth was no longer something they could ignore. They had a choice now, to stand with the galaxy as it was, shackled by lies and fear, or to take the risk and fight for something unknown, something that could reshape the very fabric of existence. Leela clenched her fists. Then we break it. We end the cycle. Together. Marcus nodded. Together. With that, the decision was made. They were no longer just fugitives running from the Alliance. They were the last hope for a galaxy that had been living in the dark. The shattered veil was their path forward, and nothing would stop them from reaching its heart. The decision was made, but now the real test began. The architect, despite its cryptic warning, had given them a mission unlike anything Leela and Marcus could have ever anticipated. The core of the galaxy, a place where even the most seasoned explorers feared to venture, was now the target of their quest. They had to find the veil's heart, the location of the ancient power that would unravel the galaxy's darkest secret. The journey ahead wasn't just perilous, it was almost suicidal. Leela looked at Marcus as they boarded the transport ship, their only escape from the oppressive silence of the station. The ship was small, just the two of them, the ship's AI, and a dwindling supply of provisions for what could be a long and dangerous journey. Every part of her wanted to turn back, to abandon this impossible task, but something inside her, something deep and primal, told her that there was no turning back now. They had glimpsed the truth, and it was too late to ignore it. You still think we can pull this off? Marcus asked as he strapped into the pilot's seat, glancing over at her. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it was filled with a quiet determination that mirrored her own. Leela nodded, but her heart pounded in her chest. We don't have a choice anymore. If we don't do this, the galaxy stays in the dark forever. And it's not just us, it's everyone. The ship powered up with a hum that sent vibrations through the hull, and they set course for the unknown. The stars outside the cockpit window blurred as they accelerated into hyperspace, the ship's engines groaning under the strain. The first few days passed in tense silence. Leela spent her time poring over the schematics the architect had shared, trying to decipher the cryptic star maps and the strange symbols that had been encoded into the data. She had no idea what they would find when they reached the heart of the veil, but she knew one thing for sure: it wouldn't be easy. Anything? Marcus asked one morning, his voice crackling over the comms. Not much, Leela replied, frustration creeping into her tone. This data, it's incomplete. Whatever the architects knew, they kept it hidden for a reason. The closer we get, the more I feel like we're walking into a trap. We knew that going in, Marcus said with a half-smile, though his eyes betrayed the tension that was building between them. Yeah, well, I didn't think it would feel like this, she muttered. It's like we're being pulled toward something wrong. Marcus's expression turned serious. Maybe it's not wrong. Maybe it's just truth. You said it yourself. The galaxy has been living in the dark for too long. Whatever we find, we can't be afraid of it. Leela nodded, but the fear still gnawed at her. The more she studied the data, the more the unknowns grew. The veil, the power locked away in the center of the galaxy. It was like a dark wound in the fabric of existence, and they were about to open it. As they neared the uncharted territories, the ship's sensors began to malfunction. The faint hum of the engines became distorted, and the holographic display flickered erratically. "This isn't just interference," Marcus said, his voice sharp with realization. "Something's interfering with the ship's systems. It's like the galaxy itself is fighting back." Leela's stomach twisted. They were getting closer to the heart of the veil. She could feel it now, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. It wasn't just the galaxy that was keeping its secrets. The very fabric of reality itself seemed to be resisting their approach. "We're almost there," she said, determination hardening her voice. "No turning back." They pushed onward, deeper into the unknown. The stars outside the ship grew dimmer, and the blackness around them seemed to thicken, swallowing everything in its path. It was as though they were crossing into a different realm, one where the rules of space and time no longer applied. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared, and Leela was thrown forward into the console. Her vision blurred as she struggled to steady herself, and the ship's systems began to spiral out of control. "Hold on," Marcus shouted, trying to regain control of the ship. The walls of the ship groaned in protest, and Leela gritted her teeth as she pulled herself back into her seat. Her fingers flew over the controls, trying to override the malfunctions, but nothing worked. The ship was spiraling into chaos, dragged into a gravitational field that seemed to come from nowhere. Then, through the thick darkness ahead, a massive structure loomed into view, a gargantuan object, not unlike the station they had just left, but far more ancient, more dangerous. It was suspended in space, its edges jagged and uneven, as though it had been broken and reforged countless times. "That's it," Leela whispered, awe and fear mixing in her voice. Marcus's hand tightened on the controls. "We found it, the heart of the veil." Before they could take another breath, the ship was pulled into the structure's orbit. The controls were useless. The ship sucked into a gravitational vortex that seemed to stretch and bend space itself. There was no escape now. The heart of the veil was upon them. And with it, the truth. The ship's hull trembled violently as they were pulled deeper into the gravitational field of the ancient structure. Leela could feel the oppressive weight of the place, as though the very air inside the ship was thickening, suffocating them. She glanced at Marcus, whose hands were locked on the controls, fighting desperately to regain some semblance of control, but the ship was no longer responding. "Brace for impact," Marcus shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar of alarms. Leela gripped the edge of her seat, her heart pounding in her chest as the ship lurched and twisted, spiraling toward the surface of the massive, broken structure. It was no longer just a place of unknown power, it was a tomb for the galaxy's forgotten truths. With a final violent jolt, the ship crashed. The sound of metal scraping against stone echoed through the hull, and everything went black. Leela's eyes snapped open, her body jerking upright as she gasped for air. She was still strapped into her seat, the faint glow of emergency lights casting an eerie glow on her surroundings. Her head throbbed with pain, and her ears rang from the crash, but she could still hear Marcus's voice coming through the comms, calm and steady despite the chaos. "Leela, you okay?" "I'm alive," she replied, her voice shaking. "What happened?" "We've landed somewhere. I don't know how, but the ship's intact, mostly." He paused, his voice becoming grim. "I think the veil itself, it's pulling us in. This place, it's not just a structure, it's alive." Leela's breath caught in her throat as she looked out through the cracked viewport. The surface of the station stretched before them, jagged and uneven, a sprawling ruin. The landscape outside was like nothing she had ever seen. A network of twisted metal, shattered stone, and what appeared to be a glowing energy field pulsing faintly beneath the surface. It was ancient, too old for any technology they had encountered. The dark power they had come to find. The truth was waiting here, somewhere in the depths of this forsaken place. "Let's move," Leela said, forcing herself to steady her breath. "We're not here to sit around." She unstrapped herself from the seat and made her way to the hatch. The ship's systems were slowly coming back online, but it was clear they wouldn't have much time. The deeper they ventured into the veil, the stronger the pull became. The closer they got to whatever force lay at the center of it, the more distorted the fabric of reality seemed to be. Marcus followed her, his face grim but resolute. He stepped over the debris from the crash and joined her by the hatch. With a quick motion, he activated the release, and the door slid open with a hiss. The air outside was thick, filled with a faint hum that seemed to vibrate through Lila's bones. As they stepped out, they were met by a sight that took their breath away, a cavernous expanse, stretching endlessly in every direction. The walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The energy they had felt pulling them in was stronger now, as if the very essence of the place was alive, and it was drawing them toward its heart. "Where do we go?" Marcus asked, looking around at the labyrinthine network of passages that seemed to stretch endlessly before them. Leela scanned their surroundings, trying to make sense of the chaotic layout. There was no clear path, no signposts to guide them. Only the hum of the station, the faint pulsing of energy that seemed to be guiding them forward, whether they were ready or not. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I can feel it. The power. It's ahead of us." They began walking, the silence between them filled only with the distant hum of the station's energy. The deeper they moved into the ruins, the more they encountered strange, alien technology, ancient machines that seemed to have no purpose, their forms twisted and warped by time. Some pulsed with energy, others lay dormant, but all seemed to have been touched by whatever had once lived here. As they turned a corner, Leela's gaze caught a glimmer of movement. A shadow darted past them, too quick to catch, vanishing into the darkness. Her pulse quickened. "Did you see that?" she whispered, her voice tense. Marcus nodded, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. "Yeah, stay alert." The silence returned, oppressive and heavy, as they pressed forward. The deeper they went, the more disorienting the station became. The walls seemed to shift and bend, the layout growing ever more labyrinthine. Every step took them further into the heart of the veil, where reality itself seemed to warp and flicker, as though they were walking through the remnants of something that had been erased. Then, suddenly, they reached a vast chamber. The walls were lined with cracked, glowing panels that seemed to pulse with energy, and in the center of the room was a pedestal. It was the only thing that seemed undisturbed by time. On it rested a small, spherical object, glowing with a brilliant blue light. Leela felt it, the power, the truth. It was here, within her reach. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus stepped forward, but Leela held up a hand. She could feel it now, deep in her bones. The truth wasn't just in the object. It was in the entire station, in the veil itself. They were close to unlocking everything. But the truth was dangerous, and nothing could prepare them for the consequences of what came next. "Be ready," she said, her voice tight with the weight of what they were about to do. And with that, they reached for the truth that had been hidden for eons. Leela's fingers brushed the glowing surface of the sphere, and a wave of energy surged through her, sharp and electric. It felt like the galaxy itself was waking up, 1,000 voices echoing through her mind, a cacophony of whispers and screams. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, she was no longer in the chamber with Marcus, but suspended in the vast expanse of space, floating in the heart of the galaxy. The Veil, this place, was more than just an ancient ruin. It was a prison built to contain the most forbidden secret in the galaxy. "Don't touch it," Marcus shouted, his voice distorted, as if the sound itself was bending and warping. But it was too late. The sphere pulsed in her hands, growing brighter until it nearly blinded her. The ground beneath them trembled as the station's walls groaned in protest. The humming energy that had surrounded them now flared into a deafening roar. Leela stumbled backward, the sphere slipping from her hands as she collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. The air was thick, and it was becoming harder to think, to focus. "What's happening?" Marcus's voice was filled with panic as he struggled to stay grounded, his eyes wide with confusion. Leela shook her head, trying to make sense of the flood of information bombarding her mind. She saw visions of a time long before the galaxy had known peace, before the Federation and the Council, before the rise of any government or race. She saw a vast, sprawling empire, an ancient species with power beyond comprehension. And she saw the event that had shattered everything, the betrayal that had led to the Veil, the creation of a barrier to lock away the truth. It was the architects, the ones who had built the galaxy, who had ruled it in its infancy. They had known the truth all along, that humanity, not any of the alien species, was the true origin of life in the galaxy. The galaxy had been built on a lie woven into every civilization, every law, every tradition. But it wasn't just a lie about the past. The truth was even darker. The architects had engineered every species in the galaxy, manipulating genetics, shaping civilizations, guiding the evolution of entire worlds for millennia. They had created this galaxy as a test to see if humanity, the true originators of life, could rise again and claim their rightful place. The shock of the revelation left Leela breathless. Her hands shook as the weight of the knowledge pressed down on her. The architects had hidden this truth, knowing that the galaxy was not ready for it. They had placed the Veil, this ancient structure, as both a safeguard and a punishment. And now they had broken their silence, forcing humanity to confront the lies that had been fed to them for eons. Leela struggled to her feet, still reeling from the overwhelming flood of information. Marcus was standing now, his face pale, his eyes locked on the sphere. They used us," Marcus muttered, his voice shaking with disbelief. "All of us, the entire galaxy." Leela nodded, still trying to process what she had just seen. "We were never meant to be slaves. We were the creators. The galaxy is built on our blood, on our will, and they kept us in the dark, kept us from knowing the truth." The room around them shifted, warping and twisting as the power of the sphere surged. The walls trembled and cracked, and the entire station seemed to groan, as if awakening after a long slumber. The veil was lifting, and the galaxy's greatest secret was being revealed. But as the veil of ignorance began to tear away, a new wave of terror filled the air. The architects had known that the truth would one day be uncovered, and they had made their preparations. The barrier that had locked away the truth was not just a shield, it was a weapon. The station shook violently, and the floor beneath them cracked open, revealing a vast chasm. The glow of the sphere intensified, casting long shadows across the chamber. "We need to leave," now Leela said, her voice urgent. "This place is going to collapse." But Marcus was frozen, staring at the glowing sphere as if entranced. "What happens now? What do we do with this knowledge?" Leela grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the pedestal. "We can't do this alone. We need to get back to the fleet. We need to tell them, everyone, before the galaxy falls apart." The chamber was shaking more violently now, as though the very foundations of the galaxy were crumbling under the weight of the truth. They had uncovered the secrets the galaxy wasn't ready to face, but now there was no turning back. The veil had been shattered, and with it, everything was about to change. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. As they made their way back toward the ship, Leela could feel the gravity of the moment pressing down on her. She had uncovered the galaxy's greatest lie. Now she had to face the consequences. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would she.